Good evening, I'm Farhana Sheikh and you're tuning into AWANI tonight. Approval for government procurement can no longer be given without a tender process, says Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. In his first address to civil servants, he stated that the government under his leadership will not continue to allow for financial leakages and corruption.
Soal perolehan, soal kelulusan tanpa tender, ini semua tak boleh lagi dah. Tidak boleh lagi negara ini terus dengan mengizinkan kebocoran, ketirisan dan rasuah. Tidak boleh lagi. Dan ini harus berlaku di semua peringkat. Maka untuk peringkat awal ini saya ingin mengajak saudara untuk sama-sama dalam pasukan ini.
The new Prime Minister called on civil servants to work with the government to bring about change and return the country to its glory days. He added that Malaysia had reached a certain level before, but had unfortunately declined in its economy, stability and discipline. He also said that he was not interested in bringing up indiscretions from previous administrations and that the focus should be on carrying the nation forward. Amanah has decided that its candidate representing Pakatan Harapan in the Tioman election will give way to the Barisan Nasional candidate to boost BN's chances of beating Perikatan Nasional. In a statement, Amanah Secretary General Dato' Dr. Muhammad Hatta Ramli said this was in line with the cooperation between PH and BN at the federal and state levels, with the two coalitions working together to form the federal and Pahang governments. He said the PH election machinery will work with the BN campaign to ensure victory for the BN candidate. A five-cornered contest was slated in Tioman, with BN's incumbent Assemblyman Datuk Seri Muhammad Johari Hussain, Pakatan Harapan's Fazli Johari, Perikatan Nasional's Nur Idayu Hashim, Pejuang's Osman A. Bakar and independent candidate Sulaiman Bakar clashing for the state seat. Polling for Tioman under the 15th general election was postponed to December 7th after PN candidate Muhammad Yunus Ramli died in the early morning of polling day on November 19th. The para-state government will adopt the anti-party hopping law when the new State Assembly convenes on December 19th. Menteri Besar Datuk Seri Sarani Mohamad said this will be done through the 8th schedule of the Federal Constitution that will only require a simple majority in the State Assembly. Sarani said it was decided during the first EXCO meeting last week to adopt the anti-party hopping law as well as to table the state budget on December 19th. The anti-party hopping law was passed by the Dewan Rakyat with more than two-thirds majority block vote last July 28th. It came into effect on October 5th, shortly before the parliament was dissolved on October 9th, to make way for the 15th general election. However, the law is yet to come into effect at the state level as it requires the consent of the Sultan or the Yang di-Pertua Negeri. Earlier this week, Sarani said that Perikatan Nasional had attempted to steal 4 Barisan Nasional Assembly persons, which caused him to hurriedly form the new state government with Pakatan Harapan. The decision to work with Pakatan Harapan and other parties in the unity government will not erode Barisan Nasional's or UMNO's principles. BN Chairman Datuk Seri Ahmad Zaid Hamidi stressed that the cooperation was based on the decree made by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong for a government to be formed. The UMNO president also clarified that the rejection of any cooperation with PKR, DAP and Bersatu was for heading into the 15th general election and not post-election. He urged all party members to close ranks after G15, adding that the current BN-PH cooperation was intended to bring about stability and ensure the welfare of the people was taken care of. Zaid emphasized that efforts for political continuity will not erase the party's identity, as it always championed the rights of Malays and Islam. UMNO, he said, will continue with the party's moderate and progressive stance and strongly rejects parties which use religion for politics. Who should be on the shortlist for the Health Minister? As we await the Cabinet lineup tonight on Consider This, we ask our guests what reforms the incoming Health Minister should prioritise. We will go for a quick break. Stay with us.
Bawah lengan lebih segar dan cerah dengan Rexona Baharu dengan vitamin E Revive Booster dan Sakura Jepun. 3 kali mengurangkan kesan gelap. Bila keraguan melanda, terus mara kerana setiap pergerakan adalah langkah yang cerah. Rexona, move right now.
Memperkenalkan U Postpaid Baharu. Nikmati data pantas sedia 5G, perantauan global percuma, peranti 5G dan dapatkan talian keluarga. Naik taraf ke U Postpaid Baharu dari RM38 sebulan hanya dengan U Mobile.
Political elite kena sedar bahawa negara ini harus bergerak ke hadapan. Tunjukkanlah kepada dunia bahawa yes, we have challenges, but we can stand and we are ready to open for business.
Welcome back. Chinese security forces filled the streets of Beijing and Shanghai following online calls for another night of protests to demand political freedoms and an end to COVID-19 lockdowns. People have taken to the streets in major cities and gathered at university campuses across China in a wave of nationwide protests not seen since pro-democracy rallies in 1989. International media reports that Chinese authorities have also begun inquiries into some of the people who gathered at the protests. Simmering discontent with COVID-19 prevention policies ignited into broader protests in cities thousands of miles apart over the weekend. A deadly fire last week in Urumqi, northwest of China's Xinjiang region, was the catalyst for public anger, with many blaming COVID-19 lockdowns for hampering rescue efforts. The protests are China's biggest wave of civil disobedience since Xi Jinping took power a decade ago. It comes as the number of COVID-19 cases hit record highs and large parts of several cities face new lockdowns. This is despite efforts of most of its 1.4 billion people to prevent transmission by adhering to a zero-COVID policy. The world's largest active volcano, Mauna Loa on Hawaii, is erupting for the first time in nearly 40 years. While the eruption wasn't immediately endangering towns, officials told residents to be ready to evacuate if lava flows started heading towards populated areas. The United States Geological Survey reported late Monday evening that lava flows remain mostly contained within the summit's massive caldera, but the eruption could pose a threat to nearby residents should conditions change. Mauna Loa has been showing signs of building to an eruption for years. Hawaii authorities said no evacuation orders have been given, although the summit area and several roads in the region were closed, and 2 shelters have been opened as a precaution. One of 6 active volcanoes on the Hawaiian islands, Mauna Loa, has erupted 33 times since 1843. The last eruption in 1984 lasted 22 days and produced lava flows that reached within about 7 kilometers of Hilo, a city to the northeast which is home to about 44,000 people today. The World Health Organization said it would start using a new term, Mpox, as a synonym for monkeypox. It urged others to follow suit after receiving complaints that the current name for the disease was racist and stigmatizing. In a statement, WHO said both names will be used simultaneously for 1 year while monkeypox is phased out. The WHO launched a public consultation process to find a new name for the disease earlier this year and received more than 200 proposals. It said global experts settled on Mpox after considering the scientific appropriateness, extent of current usage as well as pronounceability, among other factors. Mpox, discovered in 1958, has mostly spread in West and Central Africa until this year. Around 100 countries where Mpox is not endemic have now reported outbreaks of the viral disease. New Twitter owner Elon Musk has launched a virtual attack on Apple, potentially jeopardizing a vital relationship. In a series of tweets, the billionaire accused the iPhone maker of threatening to block Twitter from its App Store, without saying why. Musk also claims that Apple has pulled most of its advertising on the platform. The feud comes as many companies have halted spending on Twitter amid concerns about brand safety and content moderation changes following Musk's takeover of the platform. Musk, who purchased Twitter for $44 billion in October, is under pressure as some companies stopped advertising on Twitter. Musk has said he hopes to make money by turning Twitter verification into a paid subscription service, but currently the vast majority of the site's revenue comes from advertising. According to the Washington Post, Apple was the top advertiser on Twitter, spending $48 million on ads on the social network in the first quarter of 2022. In other news, Australia opposes UNESCO's recommendation to add the Great Barrier Reef to the Endangered World Heritage Site list and said it will lobby against the plan. Conservation experts working with the UN had earlier warned that the world's biggest coral reef ecosystem was significantly impacted by climate change and warming of oceans. Australia has lobbied for years to keep the reef off the endangered list as it could lead to losing the heritage status. Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek said the government would push UNESCO to not list the reef as endangered because climate change was threatening all coral reefs across the world.
We'll very clearly make the point to UNESCO that there is no need to single the Great Barrier Reef out in this way. The reason that the UNESCO in the past has singled out places at risk is because they wanted to see greater government investment or greater government action. And since the change of government, both of those things have happened.
Australia's recently elected Labor government has pledged to spend $800 million in coming years to protect the reef. The Parliament in September also passed a legislation for net zero emissions by 2050. The Great Barrier Reef is a major tourist attraction, contributing $4.3 billion to the Australian economy. That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.
Demi Cinta On Demand.
Awak tak mati lagi, awak koma je sekarang ni.
Cinta luar dimensi.
Saya akan pertahankan awak dengan nyawa saya. Itu janji saya kepada awak.
Cinta penuh musibah.
Kau seru, aku datang.
Saya nak tak kelakar.
Kau kacau hubungan aku dengan suami aku.
Cinta dendam.